Hi again, everyone. Welcome to lesson 3.5. Today we're going to take a look at factoring complex trinomials, and those are trinomials in the form ax² plus bx plus c. So right here, we see this is a standard form, but a complex trinomial has an a that does not equal 1. So the method in factoring these is a little more complicated, and we use something called grouping. So the steps are, we first multiply a and c together. So whatever the a value is, the coefficient of the x² term, and c, we multiply those two together. And then we list the factors of whatever product that is. Then we determine the pair of factors that add to give b, which is that middle coefficient. Now here's the different step. We split the middle term using these numbers, and then we do something that's called factor by grouping. So we'll go slow with this, and then we'll start to pick it up and you'll get the hang of it. So if we take a look at this example, here we have an A that is 3, and a B that is 8, and a C that is 4. And so we start here by multiplying the leading coefficient and the constant A times C, which is this step right here. So we have 3 times 4 based on the original question. And so when we multiply it, we get 12. Now that we have 12, that's the number that we're trying to think of all of those factors for. So we have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. So identify which pair of factors add to equal the coefficient of the middle term. Well, the coefficient of the middle term is 8. And so which pairs of numbers here add to 8? And it is 2 and 6. Now, what do we do with them? What we do here is rewrite the trinomial into 4 terms, and we split that middle term into the 2 factors that we just decided were the magic numbers. And then we complete the grouping with factoring. So here's what we did. Basically, we found 2 and 6, and those are our special numbers here. And what we did was we took the middle term and we split it into 2x and 6x. Then the grouping involves putting brackets around the first 2 terms and brackets around the second 2 terms. Now what we do is we treat each of those as separate questions. So we're going to look to do a common factoring of the first set of brackets. And if we look at 3x² plus 2x, the common factor is x. So we can factor that out of that bracket, and we'd be left with 3x plus 2. Then we want to take a look at common factoring the second set of brackets, and that's 6x plus 4. So the common factor between 6x plus 4 is 2. So when we factor out 2, we're left with 3x plus 2. Now, remember, if we went back to common factoring, we can factor out similar brackets. So since we have 3x plus 2 and a 3x plus 2, we factor out 3x plus 2. What's left over then is the coefficients that you pulled out. And so that's what goes here, x plus 2. We'll go through it a couple of times. Okay, so we have 2x² plus 7x plus 3. The leading coefficient, so a is equal to 2, b is equal to 7, c is equal to 3. And when I go over here, my constant is a times c. And so that is going to be 2 times 3, 6. So we're thinking factors of 6. So if I list them, we have 1 and 6, and we have 2 and 3. So which ones add together to give you 7? Because that's the b value. Okay, so I think we identify it's 1 and 6. Now, here's the new part. We take our expression, which was 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. And now that we have our numbers 1 and 6, we split the middle term, which is 7x, into 1x and 6x. So 2x squared, and we split the 7x into 1x and 6x, and then we tack on the constant at the end. So again, we have split that middle term into the two special numbers that we thought of from above. Okay, then we go ahead and we we group. So the first two terms go into one, and then the second two terms go into another. And we factor them separately, common factor here, and then common factor here. So what is common out of 2x squared plus x? Well, there's an x. You can take out an x. What would be left would be 2x plus 1. X divided by x is 1. What's common between 6x and positive 3 would be positive 3. What's left over is 2x plus 1. And then these brackets match up. So I common factor those out. 2x plus 1, that's a common factor. And then what's left are these coefficients outside the bracket. So this is x plus 3. Okay, we're going to keep going. So here we have an a of 3, b of 10, and a c of 8. So we have to find what our AC is. So a times c is 3 times 8. So our AC here is 24. Then we start to list the factors of 4. And we have, of 24. So we have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. I think those are all. So now we take a look at the pairings and which one of these pairs could add together to give you the coefficient of the middle term, which is 10. So we have 4 and 6. So what we're going to do now is we're going to rewrite the expression 3x squared, but this 10x is going to be split into 4x and 6x. So plus 4x plus 6x plus 8. So that middle term of 10x, once we find our special numbers, we split it into 4x and 6x. Then we group the first two terms, and then we group the second two terms. And now we common factor the first term. We just focus here. What is common between 3x squared plus 4x? Looks like it's just an x. And I'll be left with 3x plus 4. And what is common between 6x and 8? Seems like it's a positive 2. And what's left is 3x plus 4. Then we see that we have common brackets here and here. So we factor out that common bracket, which is 3x plus 4. And the second factor becomes what's left over, which is x plus 2. In example D, we have a equals 6, b equals negative 5, and c is equal to negative 4. So my AC is 6 times negative 4, and that gives me negative 24. So we have the situation where we have a negative value. Doesn't look tidy. And so when we start to think of the factors, we have to think of the factors that are both positive and negative and alternating. So let's start taking a look. Negative 24, we could have 1 and negative 24. We could have negative 1 and positive 24. We could have 2 and negative 12, negative 2 and positive 12. We can have 3 and negative 8, negative 3 and positive 8, 4 and 6, sorry, negative 6, and then negative 4 and positive 6. So many more factors to look through here just because of that negative sign on the 24. But we want to make sure that they add to give us the coefficient of B, and that's negative 5. So the ones that look like they match up are 3 and negative 8. So now that we have our magic numbers, we're going to split the middle term into those two factors. So we'll have 6x squared, and instead of negative 5x, we're going to have plus 3x minus 8x minus 4. Then we group. Now be careful of this negative sign here. I should probably include it. We want to group that negative sign. So we have negative 8x minus 4. And when we group the negative sign, we want to make sure we keep that negative inside because it makes a difference here when we pull out something that's common. So let's take a look at the first bracket, 6x squared plus 3x. Looks like I can take out a factor of 3 as well as an x, and I'll be left with 2x plus 1. Now over here, because the coefficient in front of the bracket or in front of the pair, I guess, is negative, you really should always try to take out a negative. So one common factor would be a negative 1. And then between 8 and 4 looks again like we can take out 4. What would be left would be 2x. It would switch the signs. Taking out a negative sign switches the signs here, and I'd have plus 1, which then, as it turns out, gives me two brackets that are common to both terms. So I'll factor that out, 2x plus 1. And then the other factor becomes whatever's left over here. So this is 3x minus 4. So if we take a look at E, again, we start to see some big numbers, but you can always, and you should always look for your greatest common factor. That way things can get a little easier. So here we can look at 10, 25, and 15, and really let's go ahead and take out a common factor of 5. So then I have 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. And now we can just focus on factoring this second part in the brackets, where the numbers we work with here now are going to be much smaller. So A is 2, B is negative 5, C is negative 3. A times C is going to be 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6. And we list the factors of negative 6 and see which ones add to give you negative 5. So we can have 1 and negative 6, negative 1 and positive 6. And I think we've already found them right here, 1 and negative 6. And what we do is, again, we split the middle term. Oh, sorry. We shouldn't go back to that. We've been dealing with this one since we took the common factor out. So we still have the 5 on the outside. It doesn't really make a difference here, but now we have, I'll use square brackets, 2x squared minus 6x plus x, because we split that middle term into the two factors that we just found, minus 3. Then we're going to group the first two and group the second two and common factor them. So 5 is still out here. What's the common factor between 2x² and 6x? Well, it looks like I can take out a 2 and an x. I'll be left with x minus 3. And then there's nothing else common between x and minus 3 in the second bracket. So we just, it's almost like taking a positive 1 out. So we just have x minus 3. And so we have this common factor of x minus 3. We can take that out. And then the last factor ends up being the coefficients in front. And remember, this one at the back here, this is the same thing as plus 1. So the last factor is 2x plus 1. All right, so there's factoring complex trinomials. So now we can factor simple trinomials where a is equal to 1. And then we can factor complex trinomials where a does not equal 1. Really, the most helpful thing is knowing your multiplication tables, sort of staying organized and following the steps, and practice, a lot of practice factoring, and you get really good at it. Okay? All right, I'll see you in the next lesson.